Yeah, hi everybody. It's Jamie Wallace here with your Q&A Zoom meeting for lesson number 9. And thank you very much for being with me today. We're going to take a peek at the lesson 9 assignment and then sort of open up our discussions to look at other parts of the course or anything you want to do today. It's a little bit of an open agenda. So let us take a quick peek at our lesson 9, and then we will go from there. So we're getting near the end of the course, and we've just gone through lesson 8, where we were looking at plant system design. And now we're looking at our Zone 1 integrated design. And of course, there's another part to the assignment. We have the building survey, and as you can see, it's worth 4 points, and Zone 1 is worth 14. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of the priorities on this assignment. The main focus is on Zone 1. And I think the building survey is pretty straightforward. We're just looking at traditional materials, what Indigenous people use to construct their homes. And, the takeaway is they didn't have a 30-year mortgage and could make any repairs pretty quick. So, yeah, it's definitely an eye-opener. And some of the constraints, and as well as, I know where I live, we're still, Western red cedar is a premium building product for certain things. I know our house is sided with it, and it's a beautiful material, very long lasting. So yeah, this is a pretty quick and interesting part of the assignment. But let us go to the Zone 1 integrated design, because now we're starting to get into, we've spent weeks on site analysis, and that's a good takeaway from the course, I think, is that, we don't just out of the gate start putting our design ideas on paper. We're spending a good amount of time really analyzing the project site and making sure that whatever we come up with is a good fit for that site. And they're all different. That's the beauty of it. You're going to run into all sorts of different scenarios over time. But that is one big takeaway is the site analysis and getting your base plan and all your ducks in a row before we start looking at design elements themselves. So with Zone 1, that's part in part of the course curriculum where we've done the plant system design, and now we're doing Zone 1. And then next lesson is the final project design. We're kind of trying to take it in steps so it's a little bit easier for everybody, and we can really just focus on a few things at a time here. So last lesson we were focused on plants and their interaction, and here we're looking at just Zone 1, which is going to be, for most people, a smaller portion of their overall project site. But of course, it'll be undoubtedly one of the more active areas. So if we take a look at the discussion board for lesson 9, we've got a little intro video from Andrew here. And then we've got a little bit of a description. As you all know, Zone 1 is the inner core of the design, and that is where we're starting today. We want to think about, and I'm sure you all have thought about, some of those elements you want to include within Zone 1 on your project site. And this is certainly the time to do that. So we're going to be looking at how you move through the site, how um, perhaps some plantings in that zone 1 area. Maybe simple like just clothesline for drying your clothes. Certainly we have our clothesline in our zone 1 area, and wouldn't want it any other way. Um, so let me see here. Um, yeah, we're just going to be basically building on everything we've done over the past weeks. But the assignment itself, we have a structure here we're hoping everybody will follow. So we want to have your base map. And what I'll do, I will get our template file here, just so we can follow along. All right. So this is the sheet you would put your base plan in, and we want you to highlight where zone 1 is, right? So we want to see the overall, and we want to see where your design ideas are going to be applied. And then we want to see basically existing conditions, some images, the base map with some references, and yeah, your microclimate, your zone map, and a zone 1 cross section, which is always fun to do. So that is a great way to start. Then we're going to jump on to the design itself. So you're going to be talking about your proposed design. And with that, we're going to be looking at some of the goals and patterns and strategies for that. So if we go to, here's our existing conditions, and then here's our proposed design patterns. So the sheet is well laid out for that. Then we're going to look at water management and what we're going to do with all the resources that are hitting the project site, coming off the roof, coming off of a driveway or a patio. How we're going to manage that, especially when we think about a surge in water during the year, often during the winter. How is that going to be managed? And then we are going to go to earthworks and vegetation. So there's a number of different components here, and obviously water being the first, and then we're going to get to all those other elements in that second section here. So there's the water management and any additional design elements that you see within that space. So I don't know how you guys are feeling about that. Do you have any questions about this part of the assignment? No? Okay. There should be some, if we back out of the template file, we get some nice examples here. These are always helpful, and these are good examples. And this is exactly what we're looking at, where we have the whole base plan and we're highlighting that zone 1 area, and then our microclimates and zone map. And then we start talking about what our purpose is, because, that's always a good question. Why are we doing this? And then some of the strategies and patterns involved with that. So, and then of course the water end of it. Yeah. So, and then naturally we end that all off with our SWOT analysis. What's our takeaways with that Zone 1 design? And this might be kind of hard to go through at this stage, but it's worthwhile to consider. And you may not even feel there's any threats, but you may identify some weaknesses and certainly some strengths and opportunities. So that's definitely a good exercise to dial into at the end of this. So that's about it for our Zone 1 design. And there are some resources here. And I think that's about all that's really pertinent on the discussion board. What we could do, if you want, is we could take a look at a couple of examples that my wife and myself have put together. So our deliverables are a little different than what we see through the class here. They're similar but different. Let me just get one up here. And if there's anything that specifically that either one of you want to speak about, talk to or talk about, whether that's plants or design or software or whatever, we can do that today. We certainly are going to have some time to do that. So totally up to you guys. It's your hour.
I was gonna say my space is so small that I'm having a hard time separating out the plant design and the zone one. And
Mm,
so I'm just afraid that I'll run into that. If I design other small areas for people, how do you separate the areas when they're so overlapped? How do you bring attention to just what you're trying to? Did that question make sense?
sure. Yeah. Here, I will try and answer that with a look at what we do. So this is one of our deliverables sheet. This may not be the best one because this is an acreage. Let me try and find a different one here. Mhm. Sorry about that. Okay, we will do that one. All right, so this is an urban project that we did, and we did the installation as well. So one thing, Tommy, that we do when we print out um, any of our design sheets, these are 24 by 36-inch sheets. So they're 2 foot by 3 foot sheets. So one nice thing about that is you can fit a whole bunch of, you can put a lot of info onto that. And when we print it out, it's really easy to read. And I think there's always going to be a little bit of a challenge working digitally on a screen versus the sheet itself, because even with my setup, I've got a couple of monitors, and one monitor is 28-inch, but it's still not the size of a sheet. So you're always going to be working kind of, you can be at the right scale, but you don't always get to see the whole picture. It can be a little bit tricky that way. I guess that's the advantage of hand drawn, is you can, and we tried that. My wife was much better at it than I am. Um, but there were some challenges for me with that. So we went back to the CAD approach. But if you can imagine, the sheet is that big, then when you start putting information on it, like say this is this, water layer or water plan, or you can get a lot of different bits of information on one piece of paper. Whereas the Google Sheets, I believe, are 8.5 by 11, or no, they're 11 by 17, I think. So your Google Sheets are larger than a letter, but they're still, it'd be like half scale of what this is, right? So now, advantage of 11 by 17, a fraction of the cost to print. And that's something whenever we're doing bidding a project, we always add printing cost into this, because color sheets are, like this drawing here where you have, say, 11 sheets, that's probably, it's going to be $100 anyways, might be a little bit more to print where I am. That'll change area to area, but it's something to factor in. Now, the one thing about the software we use, it has two components. It has sort of a design. You design in one space and you're presenting in another. So these sheets are that. They're called design sheets, and we put all this information together, extracting pieces out of the design layers themselves. So it's one thing I really like about it. They reference each other. So if I put a design sheet together and I go back and I keep designing and I'm updating, it's automatically reflected in the presentation sheet here. Um, I'm just starting up Vectorworks, try and give you an example here. It's kind of a heavy program. It takes a little bit to get going here. Let me just fire up. Here I can show you one that we're working on right now. All right. So this is an urban landscape we're working on. And we've got contour info from our LiDAR mapping that's available for free in our area. So we grab this data and then we use QGIS and extract this contour information, and then it's all geo-referenced. So we can, if you look at the top and the side of the drawing here, this is where this drawing is located in the world. And if we pop in any other geo-referenced photos or any details, it will automatically place itself in the right position, which is interesting. But as you can see, even with an urban lot, it would be hard to work on any one part of this drawing and get, just switching my device here. There we go. Any sort of resolution. So we have a rain garden up here in the front of this property, and we can see it better if we're just on the water layer. So this is the rain garden here. This is their entry. So they have asphalt shingle roofing, and the reality is, whenever we see that in an urban situation, we want to try and remediate that water rather than it just going out into the storm system. The landscape benefits from the water, but B, we want to try and make that water a little bit safer for other organisms that are going to encounter it when it gets into the streams and the river systems. So to sort of get the resolution you need, you can go into any level of resolution with a CAD system, right? So if you're trying to dial into a couple of square feet on the property here, you can do that. And then if for some reason you wanted to just show this little space in within, I'm just going to put it on this soil layer here. So this is the soil layer that I was talking about. So this is the design sheet. As you can see, we have our title block and we're kind of in a portrait orientation here. And this is that little segment I brought in from the design arena. And this is what they call a viewport, and that's what's indicated up here. And I can change the scale of it. I can change the detail, make it more higher resolution. I can do all sorts of things with it. So I'm not going to get into Vectorworks training today, but it does really help to be able to zoom in and zoom out in terms of um, your design work and how it's presented, right? So if you do want to dial in, perhaps, we really want to, high resolution, much closer look at, say, a detail, whether it be structural or whatever, it's quite easy to do. So, yeah, we just presented this, so I've got to do a few edits to it. But what we do is we'll have our base plan, and this is what we created at the beginning of the project. So we're showing existing plants and a property line, and there's a road out here and an alley going around the property. And we have 6-inch contours. So we've got really high resolution contours, and this is all geo-referenced, and our software will tell us, if we want it to, the property line length and the bearing. And then we assign different actions to these. Yeah, let me just get on the right spot here. So our existing plants, we can say this one up here. If we click on it, and we have what's called an object information palette on the right here. I can go down to actions, and you can see the tree. We've decided to retain it. Clients want to keep it. If we didn't want to retain it, we want to remove it, the tree will change its appearance. It'll go dashed, so we know that that's out when we're designing, but that one's going to be changed, so we're going to retain it there. So that's just helpful when we're designing. You'll see this one is being removed. So that is our, very plain base plan. There's usually a north arrow on here, and I don't know why I don't have one. Usually have north arrow and scale bar, so I'm not sure why that got removed. And then we do a sector map, just like you guys do, right? And we have our north arrow, scale bar. And luckily for us, our software helps us out with this, as well as a specific label for this viewport. And then we have a little bit of an explanation, because typically when we're doing sector maps, we are, this is all part of an educational process for a lot of our clients. So we want to explain to them what sectors are all about, why we're including them. So we did that. And one thing we do that is helpful is we have revision notes here. So you can see we presented that way back in March, and then we revised it based on some feedback they had. And it was really about privacy, making the privacy sector a little bit larger. But this is an important first step for us. Well, it's not really a first step, an early step, because we want to make sure that we're on the same page with our clients in terms of what they're trying to achieve in their landscape. So, and then we went into the water sector. So with us, what we do in urban, is we get the building footprint and we do a 10-foot offset just to make sure we're not working within that. Let me go to that layer. I'm not sure. It doesn't look quite right at the bottom here. Yep. So it's 10 foot out front. We can just the top section of the rain garden is going to eclipse that. And the reason we do that is we don't want to place any rainwater harvesting structures within the 10-foot band around a structure, right? Or say there was a retaining wall or something significant. We don't want to load up groundwater around it. So we're doing our minimum here. And we also have, so we've placed an overflow and we're just showing the inlets here off both sides of the roof. And this is the design. This is where we design. And then this is where we are displaying the design ideas and doing all our labeling. So it's, you'll notice in our design, or where we design, we don't have any labels cluttering up our work. In fact, we end up adding all the notes in what's called an annotation section. So we can, these are completely separate to the rest of the viewport. So we can control their visibility really easily and align all of these nicely, make it all look like it should. And so, yes, so this is our water layer, and we have to, we put in a little image about a rain garden, and then we have a little blurb here about what it is, why it's important. So what you'll probably find with a lot of your clients is that they may have a certain amount of knowledge, but it's in part, you end up becoming an educator to them, right? You're going to show them how important these pieces of the design phase are in terms of the overall with their landscape. Because traditional design does not have the same like landscape design as it is. You just really go in and impose your will. You're not too worried about working. It's a very different process. We'll say that. And here we're trying to capture all the resources that we've got. We're doing the same thing in the back too. So we proposed a rain garden in the front. Clients wanted one in the back as well. And it's workable. The soils are very, very sandy, and we're sloping away from the house here. And in the front, this is flat, so it's, maybe not perfect, but we have an overflow going to a lower area. So part of spotting these is making sure your overflow is safe. You do not want to be loading up perimeter drains on a house. You don't want to, because whenever you're working with water, it's a liability. right? It could potentially have negative impact on any structure. But rain gardens are pretty safe that way. They just infiltrate versus other water features like ponds. They can be a little bit more of a liability. So yeah, we just do a little bit of now this got changed and my labels didn't. So we presented this and then this got shifted a little bit because of the pathway coming out the back. So it hasn't been updated. But what we do include are some basic volumes, and we're in metric here in Canada. I prefer staying in metric, although I always seem to convert it back to US gallons. But so basically with this house, we're receiving about 109,000 liters a year. And that would probably be about 25,000 US gallons, right? So it's pretty significant. And that's kind of what we include for in this situation for their water, right? Um, and then we jump onto the access, right? So typical for an urban location, that's more intense per square foot than it would be for acreage. And this is kind of what we came up with. And you'll notice that these are kind of standalone. Now, we could sometimes we'll include other layers. Like we could include the water layer here and have it grayed out, as you can see. So we can often do that, but really we want to focus on the specific layer that we are designing in this moment. So we've got a walkway coming to the door, and then there's this auxiliary pathway to the side of the house. So we have this 5 foot wide pathway so people aren't confused. This is the way you go to the house, and then this is just for basically for the owners. It's not something that would attract most people to go down. And that's kind of why it was done that way. This hasn't been, this I have to revise a little bit, but basically they want a little destination to sit and to look at the landscape that's being developed down the side of the house. And there's a couple of outbuildings going here, a studio and a tool shed, and in this case, they're doing on-site parking, so we're having to give up some space on the property to accommodate a car. And the same here at the side of the house. So that's basically the access. So we've done water, we've done access, and then we drop in sort of the icing on the cake, all the living material, and soften this. And we have grayed out the access layer. So it's shown, at least these buildings are shown, etc. And these are just generic symbols really at this point. I like to show people, what tree, shrub, and herbaceous, uh, the difference between those in terms of plant types, not really exactly what. And you'll notice this is not right. We just had a meeting on Friday with these people and I was editing on the fly here. So normally what I recommend is with labels, you either have it pointed directly in the middle of the object, and I never cross lines like that, or you can have it going to the edge. And then what you try and do, if you're doing the edge here, you do the edge everywhere, right? So you try and stay consistent. But these these two trees got moved, and so this drawing's been kind of edited in process here. Things have changed a little bit. We were going to get rid of this existing plant, and now they want to keep it, so I had to shift these trees up. And normally we would do, we would do 3 significant trees or not 2, because you can imagine you come into a landscape and you've got just this heavy weight on one side and not so much on the other. But because there's an existing cherry tree here, this should work out fine. These are too close. I got to play with that a bit, but yeah. And then in the back um, we have this rain garden, and that's all planted. Again, this has been changed a bit, and we were going to vegetate this back corner, which is kind of you might find this happens to you. I should just, where you design a space and you end up with no man's land. That's what this is. We have a structure and we have a fence here and a parking area. And so anything that gets planted here is on the inside, right? But there's no way to easily maintain it or even to enjoy it. So I think we're just going to remove this and maybe a utility, use it for utility. And again, so that's why there's this box here, and this plant here is to remind me about adding comfrey. So it's kind of again, this was we're right in the middle of tweaking the soil there. So after we do the soil, we can then integrate all of these into this would be basically what you would be, if we were submitting this as a final design, this would be kind of what you'd be looking at, right? So the plant material is somewhat general. We could do some specifics here if we wanted. There's a fence shown here, an arbor entry. This has to be cleaned up somewhat because, again, I've got too many things being edited at one time. There we go. But you can see that, for instance, the plants should be up above, there's little finishing things like this patio. It looks like it's sitting on top of the edge of the plant. So in that case, I just got to change where the layers are situated and got to pull. That was originally going to be there, and this was going to be over here. So that made a little bit more sense. Now we got to tweak that, but that is basically what we call an initial concept and what you might call your final design. Then what we do and what we did during our video meeting is we're looking at refining this. So once we've refined it, which we're very close, I've got the notes from the meeting and I'm going to make those changes. Once we refine that, we are then going to start the next stage. And I can show you what that is. And that's looking at the details. There we go. So I am going to stop share there.
Do you find that your clients usually know which plants they want, or that they want you to suggest plants for them?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is actually what I'm going to show you right now, Tommy, is is the next stage for us in our process on an urban site is doing a planting plan. And what we do, and I've learned over the years, I don't want to edit anything. Like everything we've done to date, I'm fine with editing and making changes, right? We want to massage this so that it's just right for the client. And now we're into non-editing. So to get that, what I do is I put out what's called a planting palette. So we'll show the plan, and then I'll do a list of trees, and I'll divide them up. So edibles and ornamentals, and then shrubs, and then perennials, same thing. And I include some pictures. And normally they're not highlighted like this, right? They'd be just plain text. So I send that to a client and I say, this is your planting palette. Now, you let me know if there's something on there you don't like. Otherwise, this is what we will be referencing when we put together your planting plan. And there's no edits on the planting plan, but this is the time they have to decide what they like, what they don't. And then, and the reason there's no edits is if somebody, um, let's say in this case here, let's say this shrub right here is something that somebody wanted to edit, right? And then we changed it with another shrub that was a different size. All of a sudden, everything that's in front of it has to be changed. So you get the right scenario happening and you're redoing your whole planting plan. So I can't do that. Um, there's too much energy goes into it. So they get a list and then boom, away I go. And as you can see, when I start to design, I'll highlight the things I've included. So I keep a bit of a handle on what's approved and what's still left to go in if I want to. And I warn people I'm not using all of these plants, um, just some, right? And then they basically get a completed design. With that in mind, I can show you what I came up with, I believe. There we go. And this was for a couple that were kind of a do-it-yourselfer. They want to do the install themselves. Let's see. So that was their water. I won't bore you with that. And then the access was pretty small. They want an outdoor kitchen and patio area. And then that was their soil layer. And then that's the initial concept. So that's one thing to just keep in mind, that when we talk about concepts, they tend to be overall rough. And then when you're looking at details, they're very specific. So with the planting palette I just showed you, I came up with this. And because it was in a small space and I wanted to make it easier for me and the client to understand what's in there, I separated this into three different sheets. I've got kind of an overall down at the bottom. And then on the left, I have trees and shrubs. And then on the right, I have perennials. So I'm giving them an idea of the structure that's going to be attained through the woody plants, the tree and shrub elements, so they can see, we've got good structure going along our fence line and through this bed here. Um, these gray plants are existing. And And then we get to the herbaceous over here, where we're basically filling in the gaps, right? We're filling in all the gaps between the woody plants and at the front of the border here. And they've got 30-inch kind of market garden beds here, and then a little tiny rain garden. But that's kind of how I've done that one. And then, oops. And then we have a plant list. And in Vectorworks, we've asked, we have Latin, common name, the quantity, how many, and the size, right? How big is the pot size? Or it could be caliper size if it's trees. So caliper size is the size of the stem at at your knee height, somewhere around there. And then the same with the shrubs, and a little comment about them, right? And in this case, the client had this plant, the top one. They wanted in, oops, I don't know why it's doing that. So we just put that in as existing, even though it was in a pot. And then we go down through our shrubs and our perennials here. And this is what we use to send to a nursery for pricing, plant pricing. And this is what we use. If I had to back up a little bit, when we looked at that planting palette, it was all based on what is currently available in my area. So that is one really important part of, putting together details like that. You want to make sure you can get them. Otherwise, you're having to change everything, right? So there's inevitably substitutions that you have to make, but you don't want to have to substitute, the majority of your drawing, which has happened. There we go. So yeah, that's a little bit about kind of our deliverables, and we treat urban and acreage differently, right? So the urban, we price in all of these details because the space isn't that big. We kind of have a rough idea of how much in the way of details we're going to have to include, so we can price it fairly accurately. This drawing included a couple other details, a patio detail, and a little detail on their swale. They were doing some rainwater harvesting here off the roof of this covered, pretty basic outdoor little covered kitchen area. But with the urban, that'll be all inclusive. And then when we do acreage, we just do our initial design would be up to that conceptual stage. So just up to this point. And then if somebody said, well, we want a planting plan for the rest, we want to know what to put in here, then we'll price it. Because on acreage, you have no idea how many details you might have to do. So that's why we separate it in that situation. So that seems to work for us. And this is the one thing we really like about this step-by-step process is every time we get to the end, we'll do this water layer, and then we'll meet our clients on a Zoom meeting, show them it, right? And then boom, we do the access. We're on a Zoom meeting talking about it, and then we do the soil layer and we're talking about. So they're seeing this come together step by step, rather than just having this all in one. Boom, here you go. I hope you like it. And it would almost be overwhelming, I think, uh, for them to see it all in one go. So we do prefer to do it in steps, and our system is just very inclusive to our clients. This is their landscape, and not ours. Although we treat it as if it is ours as best we can. Um, I guess we're getting near the end here. Is there any questions that you guys might have? I can just blast through one more example here, but yeah, feel free if
Do
you
you have
have a
any
question.
suggestions of how to research and how to learn about pricing for different permaculture?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's one I haven't been able to figure out at all yet.
Like for pricing your service?
Yeah, for pricing design or for pricing consultations, anything like that. Like it's not a very, I mean, you can look at like Fiverr or Upwork and you have people doing designs for $5, or then you have people doing designs for $500. And then I've tried to watch some YouTube videos, and it's just trying to get a grasp on how to move further into this and how to price for people is very like not clear.
No, it's that you're right. That is tricky. Let me show you without divulging any. I'll show you what we do. Okay, just got to make a copy of something here because um, okay. Sorry, just bear with me here. Okay, just gotta try and show you what we do here without divulging some of my clients' info. Oh, yeah, this might not help you, but it'll at least show you a little bit about what we do. And this is after, decades of work, right? So everybody's going to have their own methods. What we do is we do all our pricing on a Google document. And so I have all of my pricing on one. Just trying to get rid of some of the info that's on here. I know what I'll do. Sorry, guys. 2 seconds here. See if this works. Partially. All right. That should work. So this is sort of an example of, I can quickly go through it. So when we go and we do any pricing, we have a spreadsheet sort of checklist that we go through. Okay. And we have split this up into initial visits, and then we figure out how long it's going to take us to set up a base plan, and then the sector map, zone map, the water layer, their access, their soil. We build in edits and our meetings. And in this case, there's a fudge factor because this was a really challenging project. This is quite a large homestead. And yeah, so with the place we're at in our career, and in Canadian dollars, we're charging 150 an hour for, we need basically we need $8,000 computers and $4,000 software. And so we come to this through all of our, not only what we want to get per hour to keep ourselves going, but to maintain our office overhead, which is the highest overhead we have. When I started out designing, I was charging about half of that. So I was charging about $75 an hour. And I know quite a few people that do that right now in Canada. They're charging around 75. They're starting out, and that seems to work for them. But this is all a guess, right? This is all a guess. I have no idea, right? But this helps us, A, figure out the cost, but B, when we go to execute the design, I track my time, and on the right-hand side here, I'll put in the actual values. So we're always sort of monitoring, without getting silly about it, we're monitoring how much time we spend versus our estimate. And if we're finding that we're way off for some reason, then we'll make an adjustment in the next. Like our hourly rate's been going up for the last couple of years, and that's gone up with a number of things. Our design liability insurance was last year, I think it was like $5,000. It was insane, right? So yeah, it's the one thing I would highly recommend is tracking your work. Track how long it takes you not only to do a design, but the different parts. And you'll find that there's a common, you'll probably start doing these quicker. You'll see here we charge for travel, but we know the tasks that are involved with our workflow, and that's what we're trying to. So here, our base plan, once we've imported all this data, we figured it'll be 6 hours. And then, so we know just to set this drawing up, it's almost $2,000. But, it's, a 40 plus acre property, and that's the way it is. And then the actual design end of it, all the design portions would be that. And then, so our total is $8,400, right? And we'll see if we get that. You never know. We just submitted the proposal for that a week ago, but That's what we do. So we do an estimate where we break it all down, and then we do a as we're working on it, we are tracking it. And I have all basically all the designs we do. This is the I have a sheet that has all of my estimates and all the actuals on them. So we can go back. We might think, oh, this job's just like this other one. And we take a look at that. Maybe there's some relevant history. And then the same thing when we were installing, we would do the same thing. We would track all of our actions, all of our, we'd do a much more complex estimate. Like that could be a course all unto its own. Um, but estimating installation it's huge. That's a big process. And I wouldn't, when I started, I was just charging hourly. Even for designs, I would just charge hourly because I had no idea. And my clients were okay with that. Um, but as our jobs got bigger, that became that was harder. Like people engaging you to do we had a $300,000 install that was on a handshake, and we had no idea how much it was going to be at the beginning. And that's putting yourself out there in a pretty risky um, business position. I wouldn't recommend it. But starting small and doing things hourly and figuring out your workflows and how long it takes you to do things is a good way to get started. And then we transitioned all our work over to fixed price only. So we don't do any work hourly anymore. It's just except for OSU. Um, it's strictly on a fixed price basis. So yeah, I hope that sort of answers your question, Tommy. It's too big to answer in a Q&A,
No, that's very
really.
that was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It it's a big part of the course really focuses on the design protocol, but to be an effective designer, the business end is just as important because you have to earn a living. You want to be fair. You want to provide value to people, and so it's a tricky balance.
I've done a lot of construction work where I contracted it myself, and I've found that I have underpaid myself a lot every time, and it's a very because I never want to rip people off, but I
Yeah,
need to get better at that estimating. Like you're saying, it could be a whole class in itself of, oh, I didn't think of that I was going to need, twice as many screws as I did. No, that's a lot of money, and
sure.
it comes out of your pocket. So
That's right. And I'm certainly not willing at this point in my life to subsidize projects. So um, all of our installations are, they run well um, in terms of what we're hoping to get in terms of profit and the flow of the work. But I've been doing them for so long that it's, you know, for a couple of years out of my life, that's all I did was I project managed commercial landscapes installs. So I would bid them and then oversee the installation. I got really good at bidding, and you have to. Make one mistake and it can be pretty stressful. And I've made a few in my life, but yeah, it's
that's where I
it's
do my best learning.
what's that?
Sorry, I said that's where I do my best learning is the mistakes I've made.
Yeah, well, that's a positive way of looking at them, right? 'Cause they're there to show you that, well, this didn't quite go right, and or you overestimated, and that can occasionally be the case, but not often. And but it's nice when you do that because you can show the client, well, here's your design. and here's all the details. And for me to put it in, it's this amount, right? It's a very firm, um, it's a simpler way of doing it rather than, well, we'll come in and we'll install it. We're not sure how much it'll be, but we'll let you know as we go. And that doesn't go
Here,
too well. So, but that's how we started. And with a small job, it's no big deal. But yeah, you get, we could spend a whole class on um, how to pick a client too, right? So when you're
yeah,
starting out and somebody calls you, wow, great, excellent, you'll accept anything. But the reality is you want to make sure you're a good fit, right? And now we're like that. In the beginnings, we were more, we'll take what we can get, of course. But yeah, there's lots of pieces to the puzzle. I know Javin Bernakovich and myself were thinking of doing a little mentorship program for OSU grads, if they wanted to sort of learn more beyond the design phase, more the business end of it. So that's been in the works. We have a lot of interested students. We just haven't
yeah.
made it happen yet. So um, hopefully we do soon. That'd be a fun program to do. Um, yeah, well, I guess I better stop yapping and get on with some other work here. Are you guys good, or do you have any other questions for today? No?
I have a million, but I'll let you
Yeah.
go for now.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, you take care. Thank you very much for joining me today, and we'll look forward to seeing your assignments next week, and perhaps meeting you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, you guys take care.
Thank
Have a
you.
great week.